Thank you for spending a midsummer midweek moment with WPT. Before we get started, a word from our sponsor.
Hello, WPT. We are excited to partner with you in providing quality benefits at lower prices. We are thrilled to introduce a new program that will complement your current health coverage. It has a direct effect on reducing healthcare spending with a proven return on investment. We have found this program is excellent at attracting and retaining quality employees while helping to drive better health outcomes. And the cost of the plan builds out at no cost to you. We're excited to present this opportunity to the members of WPT Incorporated. Security Plus LLC has been reducing the cost of employee benefits across the country for decades, and we'd like to add you to that growing list of satisfied customers.
Hello and welcome back. I'm Paul Rozeski. Today is the 26th of June, 2024, the birthday of Eric Blair. Incredibly famous author that almost every listener has read. I look at the world today and I feel this kind of eerie coincidence because he had such a great insight into the psyche of just man and the path that we're on. He died in 1950, and if he could see what our society has evolved into, it could be the biggest I told you so in human history. You may not recognize Eric Blair's name because he wrote the books Animal Farm in 1984 under the pen name George Orwell. It's incredible how all of the GPS tracking and digital footprint and phone microphones and website cookies couldn't have even been conceived of in an era when radios were the standards, but he still predicted the idea of Big Brother always listening and always watching. On that note, let's jump into some news together. I've got to say, I was pretty disappointed in the moment that the Supreme Court came out with a ruling after my midweek moment was done and posted. Not that it was probably a bad thing, because I was pretty fired up and it forced me to take a step before I rifled off a reaction rant. Like you probably saw on Monday in our weekly email newsletter to WPT members, the Wisconsin Supreme Court ruled in a case of Sojourn Homer versus the Village of Egg Harbor. In a 4-3 decision split along party lines, the court decided that in talking about roads and transportation, when the law uses a term pedestrian way, it doesn't include sidewalks. Among the multiple points they made to support their decision, they pointed out that the law mentions both sidewalks and pedestrian ways, so they must be completely different and unrelated. There's so many obvious and simple and really rhetorical questions here. If a sidewalk is not a pedestrian way, what is it, right? I actually think this is telling. Another one of the Supreme Court's arguments is that if the legislator wanted sidewalks to be clearly defined as pedestrian ways, they would have written it into the law. That might be the most frustrating part of it all. As a general rule of thumb, we, or I, want the judicial branch to be the adults in the room, looking at the merits of a dispute and ruling on it. And doesn't it seem like they subconsciously knew how stupid this ruling looks? And they made the argument of this decision is the legislature's fault. It's not our fault. I mean, seriously, anyone that's been a 5-year-old caught by their parents know that the it's not my fault, they made me do it argument is a horrible argument you make when you're desperate and just trying to throw as much spaghetti against the wall as possible. That's not even the most disappointing part. The most disappointing part is when I found a legal summary of the case and I sent it to a lawyer and I asked what they thought about it. And during the conversation, I could tell the person hesitated as if they were reluctant to offer their opinion of much of the law, and their opinion is that much of the law is ambiguous. And something as obvious as this can really look like the court made its decision, then it worked backward to justify it, which is the exact opposite of the standard that I want the justice system to be held to, let alone the Supreme Court of Wisconsin. In other news, a court ruling on Tuesday ordered that voters with disabilities should be able to get their absentee ballot emailed to them, which is already an option available to members of the military and overseas voters. The argument that was made was that in our voting process, people have the right to a secret ballot, and that the blind and people with, quote, a disability or a physical disability that impairs manual dexterity, unquote, have no option but to rely on another person to fill out their ballot. Logistically speaking, it makes sense that this is a problem, and it can be resolved with a process that already exists and is being used for another group of people. Now, I know that a lot of you are thinking about how this opens massive vulnerabilities in the system, and you're not alone. Something I thought was interesting was an article I read in a newspaper called The Cap Times, which is based out of Madison, and it doesn't lean left as much as it squarely sits on the left side of the aisle and flaunts it. Even they are asking questions about what this will mean. Will this be required for the August 13th primaries? How quickly can 1,800 local clerks be trained on a new system? Can the Elections Commission issue adequate, specific guidance for clerks on how to logistically implement the email option? How are they supposed to do that when some clerks don't have software to send an electronic ballot, and where some clerks don't even have a government-issued email address? I'm wondering how those questions aren't already answered if this is a process, emailing ballots, that's already in place. It's another frustrating example of something that hasn't already been recognized and addressed and fixed. And if there's one thing I learned from last year's slate of bills and laws and the whole legislative session, it's that even if local clerks come to the legislature begging for fixes to be made to improve the system and make their jobs easier, and even if dozens of laws are vetted and a bunch get passed out of the elections committee, they can get stalled, not scheduled for a vote, or vetoed, and that's exactly what happened. And the people that lose out are the voters and the municipal clerks that are trying to do a thankless job to the best of their ability, and the citizens who have reasonable questions that don't get addressed, and when the questions are about the integrity of our elections, and when the questions are just left hanging out there, everyone loses. And finally, and quickly, because I'm starting to run long, I promised a quick update on my takeaways from the newest Marquette Law School Poll that was just released a couple hours ago of Wisconsin voters. The presidential race remains a statistical 50-50 dead heat. It's gone from Trump up 2% to even, to Biden up 2% to even, and it's just, I think, going to stay that way till November. 12% are undecided, and if they asked who they had to choose, 6% break towards Biden, 6% towards Trump. Tammy Baldwin is somewhere between 5 to 9% ahead of Eric Hovde, with still 17% undecided, so that could go either way also. Everyone in the presidential race, and I thought this was interesting, has a net negative favorability rating. When asked if viewed favorably or unfavorably, Kennedy, Biden, and Trump, more people have an unfavorable view of each of them than have a favorable view. I think it's crazy. There are 132 days until the election, and how it can feel simultaneously both so close and so far away. In closing, I will give you a quote from Founding Father Samuel Adams, who said, "Let each citizen remember, at the moment he is offering his vote, that he is executing one of the most solemn trusts in human society, for which he is accountable to God and his country." Have a great second half of your weekend. As always, thanks for listening. The Wisconsin Property Taxpayers Inc. is a nonpartisan membership organization consisting of thousands of small business, farm, and homeowner members in every corner of the state. Founded in 1985, the organization is committed to providing its members with up-to-date information, legislative advocacy, and exclusive cost-saving benefits. Find out how to join at wptonline.org/join.